Good afternoon. Welcome to the 2018 Don Nehlen Lecture Series. My name is Valerie Wada. I am the chair of the Department of Coaching and Teaching Studies in the College of Physical Activity and Sports Sciences. Just a quick little announcement. Our Dean's Advisory Board always does a fundraiser for a senior scholarship. And if you haven't done so, they have some items that you can purchase tickets for a raffle. So on your way out, please consider. About 2 decades ago, Coach Nehlen established a lecture series bringing leaders in the coaching profession to campus. The first speaker in 2001 was Coach Bo Schembechler. And the caliber of speakers has continued over the years. I've only known Coach Nehlen for 9 years since I've been back in Morgantown. And we all know what an incredible coach and individual he is, all his attributes that he's received, and the impact he's had on WVU football. But there's one thing I've really observed about this man. He doesn't take no for an answer. And that's been a really good thing, because as we've asked individuals to come back for this lecture series, he continues to call, I do believe, tenaciously, yes, until they respond and give us a yes. And you know what? We're all benefits of that, that we can bring back these incredible speakers to share not only with our students but also to the WVU community. And so with that, I'd really like to recognize Coach Nehlen and his contributions that continue. As we talked about this year's speaker, the group that Don Nehlen and the rest of the athletic coaching education faculty are part of, we really wanted to look at what we considered a leader in the coaching profession who really embraced the use of science to really inform their coaching. And with that, I'm going to introduce Dr. Guy Hornsby, who is one of our faculty members, who heard the dual speakers speak a few years back about this. And when Guy talked about it, again, Coach Nehlen's like, oh, this is easy. I know him. He's my good friend. So with that, Dr. Hornsby.
Thanks, Val. So to give a little bit more background to what Dr. Wada was talking about, with it being the 85th anniversary of CPASS, we started to kind of toy around with the idea of doing something special and putting together something a little bit unique. And kind of that coupled with something we've been trying to develop within our own academic coaching program, and that is through both curriculum and through providing experience and research to students. We've been trying to build our sports science component, an applied sports science component. And so that's from everything from recently had a class approved through Faculty Senate called Introduction to Sport Technology and Sports Science. We've been building through collaborations with other groups on campus, the Rockefeller Neuroscience Institute, for example, working with Dr. Josh Hagan. We've been able to establish some relationships within WVU athletics. Really getting excited about what we're doing, as well as within the field of applied sports sciences as we're seeing it grow more and more. One of the things that we started to talk about, though, is yes, this applied sports science world is growing, but at the same time, sometimes I would hear people talk about it like science of coaching is something that's brand new, or people that are kind of getting out of their silos and collaborating and coordinating efforts and listening to one another and being on the same team, like if that's something new. And Dr. Wada mentioned, I saw Coach Brown talk at NSCA as the keynote speaker, and he talked about this work he had done with Dr. Ivy, and he actually said, you know, if you're not working and reaching out across campus, if you're not working with, say, the kinesiology department, you're missing out. And so that was kind of the impetus for that. First, I'd like to introduce Dr. John Ivy to give you guys some background of Dr. Ivy's work. He'll talk about his relationships and his work with the University of Texas and with Coach Brown. But I remember as a strength coach, nutrient timing, which for all of you that see the shakes on in the shelves and in the stores and these commercials, the post-workout shake, the carbohydrate protein, that work was pioneered by Dr. Ivy. Dr. Ivy was kind enough this morning to give a little talk and go over basically his life's work, a summary, and it really is incredible to see years and years and years of one question leading to another question, leading to another question, that ends up being a situation of not only do we understand things better in terms of muscle metabolism or acute and chronic responses to exercise or protein synthesis, it led eventually to the point of it helps practitioners, it helps athletes better understand how to go about both within post-exercise as well as long-term nutrition for athletes. Dr. Ivy was at University of Texas. He was a faculty member there for 31 years, 13 as the department chair of kinesiology and health sciences. He has established relationships and been on fellow of the American College of Sports Medicine. He's worked with numerous groups, including the American Diabetes Association, over 180 peer-reviewed articles, and his book, Nutrient Timing, which I remember getting in high school, is something that I recommend to every practitioner in the coaching strength conditioning world. Dr. Ivy?
Well, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be invited to give this presentation to honor Don Nehlen, who has done so much good work at the university here, but within athletics in general. I mean, he is someone that all coaches can look up to because he did it the right way. And, I have the highest respect for him and the work that he's did over the many years he was coach here. I think 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. So it is a pleasure for me to be here. When I was asked to give this talk, too, I was thinking, the guy said, I want you to come and talk about, your interactions with athletics and Coach Brown, and then Coach Brown's going to talk, and I was thinking, gee, this is like opening up for the Beatles, Coach Brown's a tremendous speaker, as you'll see, and so it's a hard act to precede what he's doing or going to do. But I'll give it the best shot I have. And so I really broke my talk up into basically 5 areas. One was just a little bit about me so that you see that I had some type of athletic background and can appreciate what coaches go through. 2, a little bit of history of collegiate athletics and how that influenced, for many years, the way coaches approach academia. Then talk about my early years at the University of Texas when there wasn't really any type of relationship between the Department of Kinesiology and athletics. And in fact, there was a pretty large brick wall put up between the two, although we shared the same building. And then the things that transpired within my department and Coach Brown coming to the university and the influence he had over improving the interactions between the kinesiology department and athletics, and then what I see in the future, what's going to happen if programs are going to stay at the top. So just a little bit about me. I was an all-around high school athlete. I was raised around the shipyards of Virginia, a pretty tough area. My father left school in the 7th grade, lost his father, and he had to go to work to support his family during the Depression. And one of the things that he always beat into my head and my brother's head was, you will get an education. And he wanted me to go to college. The only way I was going to college was if I had some financial aid. And so I just loved athletics, and I did go to college on an athletic scholarship. And I was the, excuse me, I was actually the first person in my family to go to college and to graduate. Upon graduation, I decided, I played 1 year of professional baseball, and then I decided to go to graduate school. And I went to the University of Maryland, and while I was at the University of Maryland, in the spring semester, I got a call from a high school coach in Hampton, Virginia, who I had played against in high school. And he offered me a job coaching. And I had always wanted to try coaching, but I hadn't given it much thought, but I kind of wanted to try it. And he told me, he said, John, if you come in and be my backfield coach and you coach the baseball team, we'll give you $9,000, $1,000 a month, 9 months program. And I thought, man, this is great. And then he said, we'll give you $600 for coaching. And I thought this was just out of sight. They're going to actually pay me to coach. So I was all enthused about doing this. And I went and I taught biology and coached football and baseball for 2 years. And there was something about graduate school that I really enjoyed. I just loved the idea of going to these classes and studying the things that I was really interested in and doing research. And I decided to give up coaching and go back to school. And so I was often asked, back then, well, why did you give up coaching if you liked it so much? And I said, well, I was too vain to be a coach. And they said, what? And I said, yeah, you don't know the stress that's in coaching and all. And within 10 years, you've got white hair, man. I couldn't put up with that, So I decided to.
Yeah, look at my hair.
Yeah. Actually, I had a PowerPoint presentation I was going to show, but then they told me I didn't have it. And I had Coach Brown when he came to the University of Texas, and he had dark hair. And when he left the University of Texas. So you don't know this, unless you coach, you don't know the stresses that are and the hours that are put in. In fact, when I was coaching in high school, my first year, I had a girlfriend, and she said, all it is football, 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 and now it's baseball, baseball, baseball. We didn't quite make it a year. and I went on and continued coaching, but I didn't have a girlfriend anymore. So, but anyway, I went to graduate school, and I was quite interested still in sports, and did a lot of research that related to sports, and continued to do that after I left. And my work then, I've had the background in coaching to some extent, and I've worked with a lot of top athletes in the world, guys like Michael Phelps and Hunter Kemper and guys like that to help them improve their performance and nutrition and so forth. So now let's turn to collegiate athletics a little bit. And we can look at how it got started, really. The first collegiate athletic team, and actually it was an intramural team, was at Yale University in 1847. It was a rowing team. And a couple of years after that, Harvard developed a team. And I think it was in 1849 that Harvard's team started. In 1953, and these were just intramural teams at the time, there was no intercollegiate athletics, but in 1953, the Baltimore Concord or Montreal Railroad Company decided to increase their advertisement and try to get more passengers on. And what they did was they came to Harvard and Yale and asked them to have a rowing competition at Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire. And all expenses paid for the teams. They would go up and get an 8-day vacation. So things haven't changed. There's still money. Money started collegiate athletics. Money drives collegiate athletics today. But back then, their baseball started in 1959. There was Amherst against Williams College was the first college baseball game. 1869, it was football, Rutgers versus Princeton. And the coaches back then were actually students. And they were big guys on campus. They were voted in. They selected the players. They set up the training programs. They set up game strategies, whatever. All right. The popularity of sports became very, very big, though. With time, collegiate athletics started, or colleges started to realize that winning was prestigious. And alumni started seeing this as well. And this started a number of sort of dubious practices that were going on where non-students were competing for universities. Universities were trying to recruit athletes away from other universities. Students were being paid to play on teams. Can you imagine this stuff, going on? At any rate, there needed to be some control over it, and the presidents took over control. And also, there are a lot of rules that were not established. Actually, football rules still weren't established, and there were a lot of injuries. And actually, over a 10-year period, there were 18 deaths in the 1800s due to playing football. That would stop football today, right? Back then, it didn't, but it would stop it today. So there were rules that needed to be made up, and so presidents got together. They started hiring coaches who were part of the faculty, right? Not athletic department, but part of the faculty. And they were expected to do some teaching as well as coaching. But as the popularity rose, coaches somewhat they wanted to spend more time coaching, less time teaching. They also didn't want to report to academic administrators. And they wanted more freedom. Athletic departments started being developed. To show you how important it was back then to have a good coach, in 1890, the University of Chicago hired Amos Alonzo Stagg to be their coach. And the idea was he was to improve their football team to increase the prestige and visibility of the team. Now, why would they want to do that? Well, back then, and up until about World War II, when the GI Bill was available for people to go to college, you weren't expected to go to college. And in fact, you were discouraged from it because you could make more money by going out, getting an apprenticeship, learning a trade, and going to work right away from high school or junior high school or wherever. So college was for the elite. They were people that had time to waste, basically, is how it was visioned. So at University of Chicago in 1890, when they didn't have a very good football team, their student enrollment was 1,500 students. In 10 years, after Stagg came in and made them a powerhouse, their enrollment went to 5,500. Now that was big, and that meant a lot more money coming into the university. University of Yale, or Yale University, in 1890 had a football revenue of $2,800, and in 1903 it went to $106,000 in that short period of time, which at the time was 1/8 the revenue brought in by Yale University. So presidents saw the value from a financial standpoint and from pleasing alumni, et cetera, that athletics could be important. And conferences started, the NCAA started, rules became more structured, and universities started developing athletic departments that were separate from academia. And of course, coaches wanted this because they wanted to spend more time coaching, they didn't particularly want to teach, and they didn't want to be under academic authority, or departments, heads, and so forth. Now, that brings me to basically the environment in which I ran into when I first came to the University of Texas in 1982. And it was throughout, and I think this is generally in coaching overall, is that athletic departments wanted to stay separated from academia. They wanted to do their own thing. They didn't want to have any influence, that to be influenced. And so working with an academic department was not sought. In fact, it was discouraged. The other thing is athletic departments have to be, or athletic teams have to be somewhat guarded, because what goes on on a team has to be held within a team, and you have to trust the people you're working with. And so you just can't open it up to everybody. Just think about, well, if a player's injured, the week before a game and that gets out and you don't want it out, or if there's some type of problem within the team, you don't want it all over the newspaper and those types of things. So you have to be able to trust the people that are working in the program. And so when I came to the University of Texas, there was no interaction at all between my department and athletics. And pretty much a wall was built there. I mean, and we were in the same building. We shared the same building, but there was no interaction. Now, my first interaction with athletics was in about 1984, and I was sitting in my office and I got a call from Peter Snell. And Peter Snell is one of the world's greatest middle distance runners. He won 3 gold medals in 800 and 1500 meters. He held 5 world records. He's considered actually probably the greatest middle distance runner ever. He's the only person since the 1920s, since 1920 Olympics, that won both the 800 and 1500 meter gold medals at the Olympics, right? So anyway, I'm sitting on the phone. I said, Peter. I knew Peter because Peter, after his career running, came to the United States. He's from New Zealand. Came to the United States, got his BS from University of California, Davis, then went and worked with Phil Galnick at Washington State and got his PhD in exercise physiology, and then was at the University of Texas Southwest Medical Center there on faculty. And I knew Peter from American College of Sports Medicine. So anyway, I got this call out of the blue, and I said, Peter, what's going on? He says, look, there's a couple of athletic trainers up here from the University of Texas down there in Austin, and they wanted me to design a pre-game football game meal. And, you know, I told him, I said, you're in the wrong place. You need to be talking to John Ivey, who's right next door to you. Go back and talk to John. And so he called me up and said, so I sent him back to you, and I said, okay, thanks. So the next day, yeah, sure enough, two guys that are athletic trainers came in, and back then there weren't any nutritionists on staff at Texas. And so I said, yeah, how can I help you? And they said, well, we'd like for you to develop a pregame meal for our upcoming game against so-and-so. I can't remember who it was now. And I said, okay, what time's the game? And, you know, when do you guys usually eat the pregame meal? And, you know, and I asked a bunch of questions. And so I sat down and I spent, probably 6 or 7 hours on this because I looked up some stuff about digestion rates of certain foods that I was going to recommend and things like that, because you really want to provide the calories, but you don't want it set on the stomach for a long time, and it wants to be easily digested and so forth. So I gave it to him, and, you know, Texas won the game. I do remember that, and I was feeling real good about it. And a few days later, I happened to see one of them in the hall because no one had ever come back to me and said anything about it. And I said, hey, how'd that meal go? And they said, we didn't do it. I said, well, why not? They said, well, Coach Akers said, we eat steak and eggs before every game. We're going to continue to eat steak and eggs before every game. So Coach Akers didn't even know anything about doing this. And that was squashed right away. My second incident was the strength coach for the basketball team came to me and said, I want to change the training paradigm a little bit, and I want to see how it's affecting my athletes. And could you do some physiological testing for us to see how it's going? And I said, sure, let's do some pre-testing, you know, come in. And, you know, we scheduled, you know, the players to come in and certain times. And we had set up the lab. I'd got my graduate students together and all this kind of stuff. And we were sitting there at 8 o'clock in the morning waiting for somebody to come in. No one shows up. So I called up the strength coach and all and said, you know, this is before cell phones, by the way. So we call up and said, didn't show up. What's going on? He says, oh, I don't know, but I'll check on it. And I said, okay. So the next day, another player shows up, and he goes through, we had a battery of tests we were going to do, and he goes through one test, and he looks at me and he says, I'm not going to do this. I'm not on scholarship to do this. And he walks out of the lab. So I called the strength coach back up and I said, hey, what's going on? Aren't these guys interested in doing this? No, and you want this information, I need some cooperation. He said, well, I really can't make them do it. And I said, well, look, we're not going to waste our time. And so we just stopped the project and didn't do it. So my third instance was Richard Quick. And remember, there's no departmental stuff here. It just says, you know, somebody asking you to do something. So Richard Quick, who was the swim coach, women's swim coach at the University of Texas and had won 4 or 5 national championships while there, calls me up and Richard, tremendous coach. He left Texas, went to Stanford and won 7 more national championships or something. Unfortunately, he died a few years back, but really tremendous swim coach. But anyway, Richard calls me up and says, John, I've got a problem this year. I don't know what's happening, but I'm training my athletes. This is at the first of the season. We got a meet coming up about 3 weeks, and performances are actually dropping off. I don't know what's going on. And I said, okay, Richard, I'll come over there, and is it all right if we do some blood testing to find out what's going on? So I went over some graduate students. We took some blood samples before practice, which was at like 5:30 in the morning. And, you know, and then after the practice, we took some more blood samples, and we measured things like blood lactate, glucose, and so forth. I went back to the lab. The first thing we measured was lactate, and we saw that even when doing the hard part of the workout, these women weren't generating any blood lactate. So right away, I got suspicious as what's going on. Because as intensity of exercise goes up, blood lactate's usually going to rise some anyway. So then we looked at blood glucose, and I was amazed. When we looked at the pre-exercise samples, the women's blood glucose levels were around 50 to 60 milligrams percent, and one was actually 45. Now, normal is around 80 to 90, right? So they were coming in with no carbohydrate in their body. So I took this back to Richard, and I said, Richard, I need to talk to these swimmers and find out what they're doing so we can help them. So I quizzed them. I had a survey, and they filled out what they ate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and basically what they said was they get up, early practice, they don't eat breakfast. They work out. They leave workout. They have to run to class. They go to early morning class. All their classes are in the morning because they have afternoon workouts as well. They would skip lunch because they didn't want to eat before the afternoon practice, and then Richard was keeping them so late they couldn't make dining hall. So the only time they were eating was at night, and they were munching on things like potato chips and Coke and stuff like that. And so I went back to Richard and said, this has got to change. If you want them to perform, they've got to have a better nutrition pattern. I said, the first thing they've got to do in the morning, get up. And, you know, anyway, we went through a series of things that they had to do, and performances came back. They actually won the national championship again that year, and I have a picture on my wall in my office of that team, which they gave me, which I was, you know, very, very grateful for. But through those times, those early times, there's a couple of things that I learned. And those were, one, don't get involved with an athletic team unless the head coach is behind it. All right? Assistant coach, strength coach, whatever, athletic trainer, don't get involved. Unless the head coach knows about it and is behind it, it's not going to go. The other thing I learned is that you have to establish clear objectives for a project and get all parties on board with it and get the cooperation of the coach to have that done. All right? So about 1989, I became chair of the Department of Kinesiology. And I was good friends from the time I got there. DeLoss Dodds, who was the athletic director from 1981 till 2015, I think it was, something like that. I think he retired a year or so after I did. But DeLoss and I were good friends, and something happened. This really started to open up things for us, working with athletics. The Athletic Training Association changed rules, and the NCAA changed some rules on who could be athletic trainers and working with programs. And a student had to be part of a formal athletic training program, academic program. And at Texas, what was happening was students were volunteering to be athletic trainers, and they were getting hours doing that and then going through certification without going through an academic program. Well, all that changed. And so DeLoss came to me and said, you know, can you help us out? Can you start an academic program? And I said, well, maybe. That takes money. And I said, you know, I will help you out, but athletics is going to have to pay for it. And so we worked out a deal where athletics sent money to the provost, money then went to us to fund that athletic training program. And so I was able to hire staff. We were able to start a program. I hired an individual named Brian Farr, athletic trainer, tremendous guy, hardest worker you've ever seen. We have one of the best athletic training programs in the country, bar none. We've got a 96% first test pass rate for the athletic training certification, national certification, which is unheard of. But anyway, we were able to start that program because of the help with athletics. And it was a good program for us to have. But both people won. We won, athletics won. They could not hire enough athletic trainers with their, you know, the cost of it. We were able to provide these athletic trainers through internships that helped the department, and it still goes on today. The next thing that I did was I established a program called FIT, which stands for our Fitness Institute of Texas. And I started this program for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to have a program in the department where our people that were interested in fitness testing, setting up fitness programs, cardiac rehab and so forth, had a place where they could do an internship. The other, it was for revenue. I wanted to bring more revenue into the department, so this program was going to go out and do in-service. They were going to set up training programs or weight training programs for individuals that wanted to increase strength and so forth, but also weight loss programs for faculty, staff, and so forth. And people pay for this, and also do physiological testing on athletes in the community, or just basic fitness testing for those individuals that are interested in knowing their fitness level, body composition, and things of that nature. I also went to the university and I said, I'd like for the university to help fund this program because what we can do is any student that comes into a physical education class, we'll test them at the beginning of the class, at the end of the class, so that they can see their progress in increasing their physical fitness levels. And the university bid on that, and they gave us X amount of money per year to help staff the program, and we would test free of charge these students, put their information online, keep it historically, and so forth. Then I went to athletics and DeLoss. And this is where Mack comes in. Up until that time, like I said, there was no real interaction with athletes directly with our department and athletics, and everything was on a kind of a one-on-one basis. You know, if somebody asked you to do something, you would try and help them out. But, you know, a lot of times athletic teams want to know body composition on their players, they want to know their fitness level, they want to know you know, whether training programs are helping or not, and so forth. So I went to DeLoss and said, our program can do that for you, and we can keep the records, and we can actually analyze that stuff for you. And if you were trying to, and actually programs like football and all had equipment to do some of the stuff that we had, but they didn't know how to use it, quite honestly. I mean, they had a bod pod for body composition, and no one ever used it. In fact, they gave it to us because they didn't know how to use it, and things like that. So we can do this more efficiently and much less money than it would cost for you to hire a bunch of people to do this type of stuff. Now, one of the things that helped us was Mack was willing to do this and have the football team tested there and put a trust in us that this information, we would do, first we would do a good job, but second, this information would be held within our FIT program and within athletics, and he could trust us. And that's a big part of working with athletics, is the trust in outside people coming in and doing things and keeping it within athletics. And once football started doing it, then basketball wanted to do it, and then baseball and so forth. And so as that, we got paid per, player or athlete that we tested, basically. And that program goes on today. But without the cooperation of Mack and football, that would have never happened probably, or it would have been a lot longer. But the spearheading it and him doing that led for other programs to get involved. The third thing that we did was we started a master's science program in sports performance and nutrition. And Dr. Ed Coyle hits that program up. What we wanted there was to work with athletics so that we had, a lot of the people in this program want to be strength coaches and sports nutritionists and things of that nature. And so working with athletics is very important, and getting an internship is very important. So we actually went to athletics and talked about, well, we've got this program, we need to intern these master's students to work in your program if possible. And again, I went to Mack, and I went to Jeff Madden, who was this head strength coach at Texas, and we talked about this. And again, trust is really important. At first, there was hesitation, particularly from Jeff. and he didn't want any outside people coming in and into his territory. But over time, that we developed that trust, and I think that it became very. And football was the first one to do this, and again, it was once our kids got in there and they saw the quality and the knowledge that these kids had, and the desire that they had, the work ethic they had, it became sort of a no-brainer to have these interns in there helping out. Not only that, athletics was willing to actually give us give us money to actually support some graduate research assistants in that program, which helped us a lot. After football started, then we had internships in basketball. We had internships in women's soccer, women's basketball, volleyball, and so forth. But it all started with Coach Brown and Jeff Madden. So that's kind of the situation we were in. And my role was as facilitator, really, and try to get these interactions. I wanted the interactions with athletics, but a couple of things I learned along the way from that is the athletic department will work with academic programs when there is a clear benefit to the athletic program. But academic programs should not work with athletic departments unless there's a clear benefit for them as well. So I wasn't going to take my department, staff, and so forth, and our facilities and our knowledge and give it away for free, just as they wanted quality. And this assures a couple of things. One, it assures respect from the athletic department. If they aren't willing to pay for it, they're not respecting my knowledge and what I can do. And if I do something, there's no guarantee that they're going to pay any attention to it. It's just like anything else in life. If you don't pay anything for it, if there's no price for it, you don't value it. You know, I have my wife, I'll tell you this story real quickly. My wife has an uncle. He's since deceased, but in my conversations with him were pretty enlightening at times. I thought he was a very smart guy. He had a seat on the New York Stock Exchange. I told this story this morning when I was talking to Guy's group. He had a seat on the New York Stock Exchange, and he decided to give that up and start his own business. And his business was to monitor the people that were seated on the stock exchange for other companies and to evaluate their performance and give that information back to the companies as well as projections of how the company was going to do. And he went around to all these companies to try to get people to pay him to do this for his services and couldn't get anybody to do it. He thought he was going to go broke, he said. And he finally went to a friend and he said, and I don't remember the guy's name, but let's just say it was Lenny. He says, Lenny, I don't understand it. I'm providing a really wonderful service. It's a unique idea. Why aren't companies interested? He said, because you're not worth it. He says, what do you mean? He says, well, you're not charging anything. You gotta, you know, there's no value here. They don't see any value. They think that, you know, it's just a scam because you're not charging as much as you should. So he told me, he says, so I raised the rate to join my company, for me to do this service for him, by 5-fold. He said I had more business than I knew what to do with. All right? There was value in it now. You know, they were paying for something, they were interested in it, and they thought it was worthwhile because they had to pay for it. Right? And I think that's the way. You know, and he said one other thing. He says, you're only worth what you think you are. Now think about that for a minute. You're only worth what you think you are, right? So you're not going to increase your worth if you think you're at a low level. You've got to think big, right? So I thought that way about my department. My department's a good department. I've got excellent people. We've got excellent knowledge. We can help, but we need to be paid for it, right? The other thing is that pay does not necessarily mean in money. There's a number of ways that there's payment, you know, like providing scholarships and so forth. But I never asked anything for me personally from the athletic department, never. But the athletic department was very nice to me, I can say. In fact, when we won the national championship in 2005, I got a championship ring, which I'm very proud of. And Mack had a lot to do with that. And so, you know, but that was because of my contributions to the program overall. The other thing that, there was a couple other programs that I did personally, like I helped a nutritionist set up nutrient timing programs for all the athletic teams. What supplements needed to be provided during competition, what needed to be provided post-competition for recovery and also for training purposes and those type of things. And so there was this really nice interaction. And up until I left, I really enjoyed my interaction with athletics. They were a great group to work with. Once you get into the door, once trust is between the parties is established. The other thing, where I think it's going is that I think it's going to be more collaboration between academics and athletics in the future. And that's going to occur through a couple of mechanisms. One is through possibly setting up what I call performance teams. So I think athletic directors will come in and they will ask for faculty to be part of a council to help them make decisions on problems that arise. You know, well, we got a situation with this team, there's a lot of bulimia that's occurring. You know, what could we do? Or this team doesn't seem to be improving. There are a lot of injuries. What's going on? And so there can be an athletic council made up of exercise physiologists, biomechanists, motor control specialists, orthopedists, and athletic trainers, and so forth from the faculty that can give advice along these lines. The other way I see it is setting up what I call high performance training programs. And actually I pushed this at the University of Texas the year before I left. I met with the provost, the athletic director, vice president for facilities, and the dean of my college, and I talked about the structure of this high performance center and how it could be a benefit to the athletic program and the athletes. And I just wrote this mission. Actually, after I retired, I was asked by Tom Osborne to come up and give this presentation to him and a couple other people as to what this center would look like I did at the University of Texas. And the way Tom found out about it is a good friend of mine, Dave Ellis, was the first sports nutritionist hired by any college for athletic teams, not a dietitian, but sports nutritionist. And it was Tom Osborne had hired Dave at Nebraska. And Dave left after Tom retired. I don't know if you know, Tom went on to be a senator or a representative of the state in Congress, and then came back as athletic director. So I went up and talked to Tom about this program. But anyway, so it was something like the mission would be the West Virginia University Center for Athletic Excellence seeks to enhance the athletic performance and quality of life of the student athlete through research, instruction, service in the areas of exercise training, recovery, skill acquisition, health screening, care, nutrition, and rehabilitative medicine. And so set up this program, and I won't go into detail about it, but you know, it has a major impact of a research component, an in-service component, and a practical aspect component that work together along with a core of faculty that help with the research and help with the in-service programs. And I think that you can design some really great programs where you take advantage of the knowledge and skills that are in kinesiology departments and biology departments and so forth that can be applied to athletics and bring forth quickly the new advances in those areas. You know, usually when something's published, it takes 10 years to get to where it's practically used. Of course, that's speeded up now with technology, but it really takes a long time, whereas you can do that right away, and particularly if you're doing the research yourself, right? So, in summary then, what I basically can say is that if you're going to work with athletics, one, you need, and you're working with athletic teams, you need to work with the head coach. You may have to get the head coach on board with what's going on, all right? It's not going to work unless you do. You need to establish clear objectives, and everybody be on the same page with this and have the support of the coaches, staff, and players. You need to be compensated fairly for this. And by being compensated, one of the key things is if you're going to do something for somebody, it usually costs money to do it, and you can't do a quality job unless you have the money to do that job, right? So that's another aspect that has to be considered, not just the value that you have, but also what you need to do a good job. I forgot about one other program I just want to talk about in our master's program. And I was talking about physical performance and strength. We actually did, Coach Brown was very concerned about dehydration problems at Texas for 2-a-day practices and so forth. And our program came over, did testing on the athletes, figured out water loss, electrolyte loss, figured out how much fluid needed to be consumed and electrolyte concentrations needed to be consumed each day to replenish those so that dehydration wouldn't occur. And we were able to figure that out per player. In other words, we could actually develop specific drinks, recovery drinks for the players based on that information. That's great information to have. Another time, we were asked to do some testing with women's soccer. At the end of the season, performance was falling, and so we did testing there to figure out what was going on, and we came up, and it helped us a lot if we found out that they were being overtrained, power was falling off, and we found that measuring muscle power was a simple way of determining overtraining. And we got the coaches to back off on the training and so forth. Coaches in general, if performance is falling off, what do? They want to work you harder, right? We got the coaches to back off, performances went back up. So there's a lot to be gained with working with athletics. It has to be on a mutual basis, though, I think. And but I can stand up here and tell you right now that the things that we did at Texas would not have occurred without the help of Coach Brown and the Lost Dodge there as athletic director. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ivey. I will try to be brief. Before I go over just a small piece of Coach Brown's accomplishments as a football coach, last night I had the privilege of joining Dr. Wade and picking Coach Brown up from the airport in Pittsburgh, and so driving back here to Morgantown, got to spend just a little bit of time with him. And a couple things really came across that we try to get across to our students in the coaching major. And that is, one, Coach Brown is incredibly passionate about what he does. You know, even after he stepped away from coaching, being a coach is still who he is. And then also, we really try to preach doing things the right way. And I think that, you know, our students with social media and the news cycles, there's so much negativity out there nowadays, and everyone seemingly wants to focus on these negative things and the controversies, and let's, you know, kind of talk about not necessarily the great things about sport and the great things about coaching and the great things about developing young people through sport, and that really came across in getting to talk to Coach Brown for that little bit there. But just briefly, Coach Brown has been the head football coach at Appalachian State University, Tulane, University of Tulane, University of North Carolina, and probably what he's most known for is University of Texas from 1998 to 2013. Coach Brown is a national champion, the 2005 team winning the Rose Bowl in 2006, one of the most famous college football games of all time when they beat University of Southern California. 20 consecutive win seasons, 17 consecutive bowl appearances from 2000 to 2010. Spent 169 of 192 weeks in the coaches football top 25. He's mentored coaches such as Will Meschamp, Greg Robinson, Gene Chizik, Joe Feldman, among many, many, many others. He most recently was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame, and he currently is an analyst for ESPN. Ladies and gentlemen, Coach Brown.
Thank you, Guy. I start by saying congratulations to you students that are here on a Friday afternoon, because that's unusual. So I appreciate you and what you do when you take a step to go beyond where all the other students are, wherever they are drinking this afternoon. It gives you a step up. So don't take that for granted. Anytime you have an opportunity to sit and listen to a superstar like Dr. Ivey, use it, because you need that knowledge. What we did is Coach Nehlen has been so good to all of us that he taught us so much. We learned from him so much. He's classy, he's smart, he always did it the right way, and he won, and he always gave back to us. So I appreciate you, Coach, love you, Coach, and I came because of you. I can promise you that, because you mean so much to me and my family, and you've done so much not only for this place, but for college sports, and you always did it the right way, and we appreciate it. And the other thing I would say, Valerie, Christina, Guy, you guys have been great, so thank you for putting this on, and I'll be brief. I've got 2 or 3 things that I think are really important. As you look at college football right now, when I started back at North Carolina in 1988, you had 5 to 7 years to build your program. Now you got 3. So if you're going to work with football coaches in general, they're going to need for you, to, as Dr. Ivy said, to show them some immediate results. What can you do to help me? Because I don't have very long. So now they're offering freshmen in high school recruiting. When you get your recruits in, you usually hit on about 50% of your recruits. If you're playing like West Virginia is in the Big 12, then you've got teams that are running 90, 100 plays a game, so you've got to have depth. So the key to that coaching, to get one of these, and I brought this for you. You got good hands? Good hands, that's good. Got to catch it. Pass the national championship ring so everybody can see it. And I've never lost it, so get it back to me, please. I don't want to say West Virginia is the only place that stole my ring, so I don't want to do that as we get through. But those are hard to get, and to do that, you've got to have everybody involved on the team. It's got to work. So what we looked at early is how do we get the best development for our players? How do we get our guys bigger, stronger, and faster after we get them there? How do we get them more flexible? And how do we get them to play at maximum speed and strength and stay healthy? Because if you're a healthy team, if you're good enough and healthy, you got a chance to get one of those rings. If not, if you lose a lot of players, we lost 15 starters my last year as a head coach. 15. And it was just freakish that it happened. It had nothing to do with anything that we were doing except we had lost our edge in recruiting and didn't have as much depth, in my opinion. So when you start looking at that and you go back and look for people on your campus like you all that are on the cutting edge of nutrition, strength, stretching, and so forth to give you an advantage over other schools. I remember early there was a young man on our team named Leonard Davis. He played for the Cowboys. He was 6'8", and listen to me now, he was 383 pounds. I used to say he was 283 pounds because I couldn't fathom him being 383 pounds, so I'd never get it right. I'd say he's 283 pounds. I'd say, Coach, he's 383 pounds. And we actually nearly killed him one day in the off-season program because he was too big, we thought, and we were trying to get him to lose weight. What we didn't understand is he didn't need to lose weight, he needed to get in shape. So we were wrong, and they packed him in ice, took him to the hospital, and we had to keep him alive until we got people like Dr. Ivy involved, and we found out that what we were looking at was wrong. We needed to look at body composition, not how big he was. He was that big, and he could play that big. And we needed to embrace him being that big and not have him eating lettuce because he wouldn't even eat it anyway. Leonard liked barbecue, and he liked the good stuff that a good Texas guy likes, but he could play at 300, and 83 pounds. And we absolutely nearly killed him because of our ignorance of body composition. So we got with Dr. Ivy and his group, and you all know these things, but he started skin calipers, he started hydrostatic weight, the bod pod, the DEXA scan bone density, and we would actually text our kids as soon as they would get those results. And I talked to the staff at West Virginia today. We took pictures of kids when they got there, and then we would take a picture after the first 6 months, after the first year, and such to let them see how much improvement they'd made. And then they started eating right because they liked the results. But you've got to show them some results before it'll work, and all of these things happen for us in a positive way. Doc also tested, because it's really hot in Texas, and we were trying to figure out how do we have 2-a-day practices in 107-degree heat and not kill them? And do you get them in shape or do you wear them out? And there's a fine line between the two. Our first 3 or 4 years there, we were playing really poorly at the first of the season, and I thought we were out of shape. In essence, we were exhausted. They were tired because we'd had them out in the heat too long. So we actually went to Dr. Ivy, we went to the Saints, we went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, we went to Houston Texans, we went to people who were training in the heat and asked them what they would do, and they actually told us, keep them out in the heat for an hour and take them inside your indoor area for an hour. They told us the last 10 days before the first game, keep them indoors. They're already in shape. So what you need to do is get their legs back. You need to be fresh when you play. And one of the things we always prided ourselves, we played in 20-something bowls, we always prided ourselves to be a better team at the end of the year and more fresh at the end of the year than we were at the beginning of the year. Even when we lost a couple of bowl games, I tried to find out who was winning the most bowl games. It was Bobby Bowden at Florida State, and it was Wisconsin, Barry Alvarez. So I actually got on a plane. I went to see Coach Bowden, and I said, I know you got good players, but tell me why you're winning all the bowl games and none of the rest of us are. I went to Wisconsin. I sat down with Barry, and I said, you're winning all the bowl games. How are you doing that? And both of them said the same thing. They said that what we do is while we're at home, we're going to have like two-a-days. We're going to work the guys really, really hard. They're going to have a short break to go home for Christmas, and then at the bowl game, we're going to do absolutely nothing but review and stretch and make sure we're fresh for the ball game, because at the bowl games, too many people are walking around. You don't have your routine. You don't have your sleep, and the freshest team at the bowl game wins. And I think we won 7 out of 8 after that, because we were more fresh in the fourth quarter than the other teams, and it just made sense for us. So when we started looking at hydration, because we had kids with cramps, and then they'd have the cramp and they'd pull a hamstring, and heat was such an issue for us in early ball games, we went to Doc, and he started testing for VO2 max, sweat levels, hydration levels, which would help us prevent the cramping and the muscle strains and the pulls. And you pull a hamstring early, you may be gone for the year, because it's hard to practice and stay in shape with a hamstring pull. So it could cost you for the entire year. He checked fluid levels, the electrolyte protocol. With a lot of the kids modern day, there were some kids that were dropping and they were dying because they had a sickle cell trait. We didn't know that. Dr. Ivy got with our guys, and we started testing that for every player when they would show up at Texas, and we would know who had the sickle cell trait. You had to watch them more carefully. You had to test them out on the field to check their heat levels, and you had to pull them out. You just pulled them out of practice earlier. And we had some great players that couldn't play early in the season as much as the other kids, and we needed to know that. The assistant coach had to know you can't push the guy beyond where he is, or he sure wouldn't be a good player, but he also might die. And then you had to go back and try to figure out recovery. How hard could you push and then get them to recover and restore their legs and their energy? Doc mentioned nutrient timing before, and he is the one that started these protein shakes, and he's the one that started getting nuts and fruits and different things in the weight rooms across the country, because no coach, everybody thought that was too soft. And when we started the protein smoothies, people even started laughing at us about they're giving these kids smoothies, they're soft. And it was absolutely about nutrition. And then Doc even started the snacks, because eating differently and at different times of the day were very important. He started with certain kids having protein shakes an hour before ball games, which would give them a little bit more that they could eat. I remember we played Brigham Young one night in our last year at Texas, and there was an hour and 45-minute delay, and we were in the dressing room. We kept them in their uniforms. It was hot. We didn't feed them, and we stunk. We absolutely stunk in the ball game. 5 weeks, 6 weeks later, we played at TCU. There's a 3-hour and 15-minute delay. And we took all their clothes off. We had them shower. We fed them. We had them get their music. We had them get relaxed. We had them re-stretch. And we won the game 30-6. So there's so many things that you and your careers will be able to help your football program with if you can just bring it to them and convince your head coach that you're going to help him win. Because that's all he's going to want. He's going to want your trust. Dr. Ivy never, ever gave any information in my 16 years out about any of our players, except to us. And the paranoia with coaches is, I don't need on the streets that so-and-so's too heavy. I don't need on the streets that this kid's got the sickle cell trait. We don't need that out. So you have to have complete trust in the people that you're talking to. Doc also helped us with how to feed our guys with pre-practice with workouts, and he actually started the pregame meal and taught us to move it back 4 hours before the game, and what to eat. And all of those things are very, very important as you go to it. And the other thing that he did is in my time at Texas, he actually talked DeLoss Dodds, our athletics director, into getting us a nutritionist, Amy Cole. And she's really smart. She was really good. She was kind of a part-time person. We got her full-time, and now there's 5 full-time nutritionists in the Texas athletic department, and it does make a difference. And it can win football games. So when you start looking at your job in this department as it compares to major college football programs like a West Virginia, like a Texas, as Doc said, number one, you got to gain trust. Number two, you got to have a plan and convince the head coach that you're worth it. You're going to help him win football games and tell him why, and then show him why, and then follow through with it and be part of the team. And I think that's the most important thing for us. So we wouldn't have won the national championship, in my estimation, near as easily unless we'd had Dr. Ivy and our kinesiology department involved and on board. And they were part of the family and part of the team, and it made sense for us. They're right there, and they cared. They wanted to win. And that's the other thing. You've got to pull for your group and your team. You don't want somebody around doesn't care whether you win or not. It is important that you win. And that is the bottom line. You want to treat guys right. You want to do everything right. But for it to work, you have to win. And for you to stay in the long term. We even had Jeff Madden and Benny Wiley were very good friends and very respectful of Dr. Ivy. But we had a guy who donated all the money for our weight room who was from Saudi Arabia named Dr. Rashid, and he's worth $8 billion. And he came in and said, get what you want. Well, that was a mistake because we nearly spent the $8 billion, I think. They said we had an unlimited budget, and we went over it. But what Dr. Rashid did, because Dr. Ivy and his group were so important in our progress at the University of Texas, Dr. Rashid actually gave 3 scholarships in mine and Sally's name to the kinesiology department because they were that important to us. So you can't just talk about it. You can't say you're going to do it. You've got to step up and do it right if it's going to work. Guy?
Thanks for the kind words. I appreciate it.
They're all true.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you, Guy.
All right, we have about 20 minutes. We're going to open it up to the floor for questions. Dr. Ivy, Coach Brown, be a conversation. It can be something related to what they talked about. I don't think I need to moderate. I think I can let you guys take it.
It's up to you.
The way these things usually work, usually the first question or two is a little bit difficult, and then after that things get going. So does anybody have a question? Yeah.
Well, yeah, Terry was in the Department of Kinesiology, and he and Jan Todd started the, I can't remember what but it's a library and exhibits of weight training and conditioning and so forth there. It's a tremendous museum that they've started. Terry was an athlete at the University of Texas, and but his major role in the department, he taught sports history, and he taught history of athletic training and strength and so forth. And his interaction, I don't know, early on, when I first got there, he was doing some work with athletics, but it was mainly setting up the library and getting that going is his major work when I was there. that they were
How did you monitor the players to make sure they were doing their part?
Oh, well, you know, what, like I said, early on when there was no cooperation from the coach and getting the players to be cooperative, there wasn't any. But, you know, with Coach Brown and his staff, when we were working with athletics there, it was passed down. Coach Brown tells Coach Madden that the players will do this, the players will do that. And so, you know, the monitoring of the players, I mean, they would show up. They were actually very good in all the stuff that we did for football. And also the other programs, once that started. Having the head coach behind it, you know, made all the difference in the world. The players knew that it was important. But as Coach Brown said, when we were providing results, that was important as well. And so there's more cooperation when you feel better, performances are going up and so forth. I know that a lot of the players that we tested with when we were looking at the dehydration, the sickle cell stuff and so forth, we found out that some players were losing tremendous amounts of electrolytes. And there was no way they were replacing those in their diet. And so we were able to actually set up specific drinks for specific players. And when they saw they felt better the next day, their performance is going up, then when that happens, compliance is easy, you know, and keeping up with that. But we kept diligent records. So you can go there today and you can pull out all the records. But as Coach Brown said, they're in our department and they're in athletics, and that's where they'll stay. But they're all there.
And our guys knew it. Every coach looked at all of the data. They knew exactly when their player was gaining weight, when he was not. They knew how flexible he was. They knew how much body composition he had, if he was too heavy. And they talked to them about it every day. We had every young man weigh before every practice and after every practice, and it was mandatory. And if Doc had a drink for him, we had it in his meeting room when he came. We had it in his locker. So we would make them drink the bottles of whatever before they practiced and immediately afterwards. So I think, again, if I could tell you something, if you're going to be working with football coaches who are busy, paranoid and egotistical in some ways, very busy, you're going to have to get their attention to where they buy into it, because if they don't, nobody else will. And our players knew that it was very, very important. But also, if you make the coach feel like it's going to help him win, he'll do it. If you make him feel like that, he's going to make the player feel like it helps him win, and then you've got the whole package, because if a player thinks you're giving him an advantage, he's going to take it. All of them want to be in the NFL, and all of them want to win all the games. And if you can help them do that, they're all in.
Yes.
What do you look for in young people that you're going to hire them and recommend them for other jobs? And the thing you just said too, if you do a great job, you don't have to ask them to recommend you; they will. And if you're having to go in and ask them, it's probably not working very well. I would say number one, passion. They're going to want you to know that they're going to want to know from you that you are very passionate about your job and what you do. They want you to be positive. They want you to have high energy. They want you to be knowledgeable. They want you to be very confidential. And they want you to be a positive for the program, not a neutral or not a negative. And I brought a staff member in one time because he was a very good staff member, but he was miserable, and he made me miserable. And I didn't like to see him. And he's still there. I saw him the other day. And I brought him in. It was about the third year, and I said, you know what, you're so miserable. You never smile. You're always talking about how miserable you are here. I can get somebody else. So you either get happy and get happy fast, and don't you ever come in here griping again, or I'm going to fire you. And I will say, that was about my third year, and it's 17 years later, from that day until now, every time I see him, he says, hey, Coach, how are you? It's great to see you. And I said, good. Even if you're miserable, I don't want to see it. So you need to be a positive. Be a positive. Bring something that he can't get without you being there. And that's what I used to hire people and pay them for that reason. Somebody would say, you're not giving me enough money. And I said, I'm paying you what you're worth to me. So don't gripe about not making enough money. Bring them something that they're going to worry about you leaving enough that they're going to pay you to stay. Yes, sir. My stand on drugs. We have a drug problem in society. There's no question about that. What our dear professor is talking about, as I said one time, if we know that someone is using or been involved with drugs, we're not going to recruit them. And it is a real problem, not with football players, but with students, with people across our country. And I think that at some point we've all got to stand up and take a stand, or it's going to take over our country. And it really, really is a concern to me with all of us. And a lot of times the younger people, when they come to college, are not old enough to understand whether they can handle it or not, and then they get addicted and they got a problem for the rest of their lives, or it changes their lives, or they get in trouble. And so I was constantly talking to our guys about drugs, and we would talk to them about legal drugs, prescription drugs, and illegal drugs. I'm 66. I've still never smoked a joint in my life, and people look at me and say, well, you're missing out, you know. And I said, well, maybe I am, but I am. I was telling the guys at lunch today that in one of our meetings we had a couple of guys that had a positive for marijuana, and I came into the team meeting and I was so mad, and I said, that stuff must be so good. It must be so good that you'll give up your life, you'll give up your scholarship, you're going to embarrass your family, you're going to get kicked out of school. One of these days when I quit, I'm going to get Sally to put me in a room and I'm just going to smoke it all day and do that. And they all giggled, of course, and I was so mad, and I slammed the door and walked out, and Sally said, you just told them you're going to smoke dope. Do you realize that? So, but I just, we've got to stop it, and we've got to stand up and stop it and be strong, or it's already out of control. And I've got 6 grandkids and 4 children, and there's been some involvement with drugs in some of their lives, the children, of course, and it's dangerous. Boy, it is really dangerous. So if you've got somebody that's on it, or they're trying to get you on it, you need to step up and try to stop them. If you can't stop them, if you can't get them any help, I'd go get other friends.
Bigger, stronger, faster.
In case the folks in the back didn't hear.
Yeah. So what's the changes in college athletes since the time we started and now? And they are bigger, stronger, faster. I remember my freshman year playing football in college, and the biggest player on the team was 275. He was a defensive tackle. Today he might be a linebacker or something. I don't know. But you know, it was a lot different then. And they're bigger, stronger, faster. There's no doubt about it. And you know, it's better training, better nutrition, and you know, the advantages, the advances that have occurred in exercise science and training, and what we know about how training adaptation occurs and the influence of different nutrition. You know, I can think about when I was an athlete, and I think Coach Brown was probably the same way, is the last thing we thought about was nutrition. I mean, I just ate because I was hungry, but we didn't have any supplements, and we didn't take anything prior to a game to improve performance, or supplements post-exercise training to enhance training adaptation and recovery and those types of things. It wasn't anything, and there was no sports nutritionist or anything like that. So, you know, there's tremendous advances that have occurred in athlete in general, and also the popularity of major college sports. You know, I talked earlier about Yale in 1906 had a budget of football brought in $106,000, which was 1/8 the budget of Yale. Today there are athletic programs and collegiate athletic programs in the country that are almost, and maybe topping it now, I'm not sure. The last I saw was 2015, but there are some that were had budgets of close to $200 million a year, right? So, you know, athletics is big business now, big business, and the schools know this, right? And there's a heck of a lot of pressure on the coaches, as Coach Brown can attest. It's tremendous. People don't understand how much pressure and how much work these guys put in to prepare their teams year-round, not just during season.
I would say the biggest difference that I see is selfishness. I never thought I would see football players leaving their team and not playing in a bowl game because it might get them hurt and they won't get to play in the NFL. We had Ricky Williams that played in the Cotton Bowl and then went to a college all-star game afterwards. We had Cedric Benson, who was a great player for us, who was an All-American. We're playing Michigan in the Rose Bowl, and he hyperextends his knee on the first play. They bring him out. He limps off. The doctors look at it. They said, "You're a number 1 pick, probably be taken in the top 10. You should not play in this ball game." And he said, "Tape it up. I'm not missing this ball game." So he plays against Michigan. Didn't play great, but he played. After the game, I'm leaving the dressing room late. I'm about the last one. He's sitting over there by himself. We win the game 3 or 4 points. And he's sitting over there crying in the corner. And I'm really concerned that he's ruined his knee. I walked over and I sat down next to him and I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Is your knee hurting?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Why are you crying?" And he said, "This is the last time I'll ever get to wear a Texas football uniform." And I'm crushed. And we're losing that. Social media is promoting each individual. As Doc just said, the college game and football and basketball is getting more like the NBA and the NFL. And it's all about money. And I'm really, really concerned about where it's going. I couldn't coach a guy who came into me and said, "I'm not playing in the game because I'm looking for the NFL." I would throw up. I couldn't do it. I can't even fathom that. I get in trouble on TV because the pro guy, Booger McFarland, sitting next to me says, "Yeah, man, I'd take the money. I'd go." I can't stand it. I just don't think it's not the way we meant for the sport to be. It's not about team.
Ryan?
And sorry, I didn't mean to take off on that, but that's, get a little passionate about it. Is there any year where I thought I did everything perfect and just had a bad season? Not really. We always make mistakes. And about the time you think you're doing everything right, that's when you get in trouble. About the time you think it can happen is when it happens. I do remember years where we were recruiting and we were so good and so deep that I didn't think we needed the recruits because we had so many good players. I didn't know when they were going to play. But I do know that when you're really, really good, I said you have to be great and healthy and lucky. But really and truly, you've got to be good enough, at least too deep, so that you win enough of the games and everybody gets to play and they get better. And if everybody wants to play, and if you think about this in the sport of football, and this will be really important for you all in your careers, there's 130 players basically on major college football teams, and only 11 get to play at a time. Everybody else is mad because they're standing watching. So when you start looking at football, morale on a football team is a real problem because there's a lot more standing than playing. And when you can win enough games that you can play at least 44 or 60, that's when you get to be good because everybody gets better because they know they have a chance to play. But when you're losing and only playing 12 or 15 on each side of the ball, you got a miserable team, you got a bad locker room, and you don't have any depth. And we got in trouble in those years where I didn't play enough players. And in fact, at one time, we would take our second team players, and we never called them second teamers. We always had different colors for them, or the Cowboys and the Longhorns or something. We never said twos, because you don't want to call a guy a two, and then he plays like a two, and you're mad that he plays like a two. Well, that's what you named him. So name him something else. and we called every team the orange team, the white team, the Stampede, the Rangers. So we had a name for each team. But what I would do is force the coaches, because they're so afraid of getting fired and losing, I would force the coaches to put that entire team in early in the ball game. So I had a rule that every third series you had to play the, quote, backups and force yourself into playing them. And the truth, and what's your name? Matt. What Matt and I were talking about, the truth is, if I'm an assistant coach and I'm not helping my position player get better against the other team, what am I worth to him? Same thing for you. If you're not helping him get better, you're not worth anything to him. So I told our assistant coaches, unless you can give him something to make him better on the field, he's not going to listen to you. And if you say he's not listening to me, it's because you're not giving him anything. Give him something. And I thought that was really important.
We have time for one more question. Natasha?
Natasha, what advice would I give to my younger self? This is one that's tricky that I think is important to all of you. Is I tell young coaches now, you need to enjoy the journey. Enjoy the ride more. And I'm not sure you can and push yourself at the level you got to push yourself. I remember enjoying wins, but Coach Darrell Royal, who won 3 national championships at Texas, and the stadium's named after him, I asked him why he quit at 52 years old after only 20 years as a head coach. And he said, I quit because the wins were a relief and the losses were disasters. So there was no joy in my life. And we won. We had 9-10 years of 10 or more wins, and we were winning so much that if you're not careful, you lose who you are, and you start making your identity more about how many games you win and how many people you please than how many lives you touch. So I think if instead of saying enjoy the journey, because we would win a big game, and I would get on the plane to go home and start thinking about the next game. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind. Or I was in the press conference, and I'd be slipping. We won a game here my last year in overtime. We lost 2, maybe 4 great players, 4 starters that night. I was miserable. And we won an overtime game. It's the only overtime game I ever coached. I should have been happy, but I was worried more about that and Oklahoma State the next week. And I know you have to continue to push yourself for it to work. You can't get complacent. But I think you've got to make sure that the reason that you're doing what you're doing is that you want to help people go from where they are to somewhere else. And you can't lose that perspective, because if you lose it and it gets only about wins, you're not going to be happy because you're not going to win all the time. I asked Phil Mickelson, who's a good friend, about a month ago, what do you have to know to be a great golfer? And he said, you got to learn how to lose, because we're going to lose most of the time. And when you lose, you can't go in the tank. You got to go be better. And I see these great golfers at Augusta, let's say, and they're through on Saturday and they're out. And they shoot their best game on Sunday because they're working on next week. They didn't quit. They didn't get mad. They didn't shut it down. So my advice would be, if you're going to get into this, it's hard, and it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of energy, but if you're going to do that, figure out why you're in it. Why are you passionate about it? And if you are, don't lose that. At some point, winning got so important that I think I lost pieces of other things that were important to me. I'm sorry? I did get it back. And it was funny that we didn't win as many in the end. We were only winning 8, 9, 10. And to me, I probably did a better job in some of those instances. I think with Natasha, one of the things that happened to me, we were 25-2 when we lost to Alabama. That was the second loss for that team in 08 and 09. We lost to Alabama in the national championship game, and I was absolutely miserable. The most miserable I've ever been, and I don't think, in looking back, I gave the credit to that team for winning 25 games that I should have, because it was more about we didn't win the national championship. And you can't go into the season thinking if you don't win the national championship, you haven't done a good job. And even that night, those kids fought so hard, we lose Colt McCoy in the 5th play of the game, we nearly win the game. And I didn't give them the credit that they deserved, and I'll regret that the rest of my life.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So just as we wrap things up, I'm Kristen Diefenbach. I'm one of the associate professors in the Athletic Coaching Education Department and the Center for Applied Coaching and Sports Sciences that we have in CPASS. And we want to first thank Don Nehlen, of course, for the lecture series. Without this, it wouldn't be possible, Coach Nehlen, so thank you very much. And hopefully today what you've really heard a lot about is this idea that science is about innovation, sport is also about innovation, and the idea that sport and science and coaching all come together to really bring together that idea of innovation is just absolutely amazing. So we wanted to thank both Coach Mack and Dr. Ivy for sharing with us how they've navigated that journey and giving us some ideas on how we can take that forward in the practice and the work that we do. So thank you very much. And then just as we wrap up, we're going to be doing the raffle in just a second, but Coach Mack's ring is not part of the raffle, so please make sure that makes it back up to the front. And thank you all for coming.